Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Onyegolu. Now, just over a week ago, men who appeared to be from the Nigerian armed forces shot protesters in Lagos who were demonstrating against ongoing brutality by police in the country. An uneasy calm has now returned to the city streets, although there have been pockets of disturbances in places like Onitsha in Anambra State in the southeast, where the statue of the first president of Nigeria, Nnamdi Azikiwe, has been attacked. But the focus is still on that shooting incident in Lekki in Lagos. While video footage shows men in army fatigues opening fire, the army said initially that reports of its involvement are fake news. More recently, the force's high command is now saying that the decision to call in the military to restore calm was taken by the Lagos state government. Last week, the governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, accused powers beyond his control of shooting at protesters. He later said CCTV footage showed army personnel at the Lekki toll gate, the scene of that shooting.
Proceedings without any interference from government or any quarters. It is a judicial panel. Justice will be dispensed according to credible evidence and proof. So you can assuage the fears of the youth that this is going to be an exercise they are going to be proud of.
Each state had anti-robbery squad. Then what government decided to do, because of the incessant robbery incidents, was to create a special anti-robbery squad. And this was 1992. And it wasn't like this. We were unknown. Our actions were covert. We were like ghosts. That was the first second in command when it was put up. It was a child of necessity then, because we had series of violent crime in Lagos. That was the time of Shino Rambo.
Our president, look at what people are saying. Please help us. If it is Endsars, Endsars. If it is bad government, bad government. Everybody, we want to enjoy our life. This offer is too much.
I feel right now that everybody from the 60s, the old leaders that we're having, they should just drop now immediately. That's what I feel. Because we have given them time, we've given a lot of them time, years have gone by, and the same old thing.
Well, for his take on the latest developments around those Endsars protests, I'm joined now in the studio by Valentine Ozigbo, the immediate past president and group CEO of Transnational Corporation of Nigeria, or Transcorp, owners of the Transcorp Hilton Hotel in Abuja. Mr. Ozigbo is now a governorship aspirant in his home state of Anambra in southeast Nigeria. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you, Charles.
And you're a governorship aspirant who wants to govern your state. What is your assessment of what's been happening in Nigeria over the past 3 weeks or so? I mean, let's start with the Endsars protest that began peacefully and gained tremendous momentum across the country and even the world.
It's been an interesting journey. To be honest, what I see about Endsars is a metaphor for everything that has been bad about Nigeria, about bad governance. So, because if you see beyond just the 5-point agenda, I started to see that every other person started to come up with other things that we needed to end beyond SARS. But it's good that this has started. Is awakening call, is a way to actually represent the youth taking full responsibility for their destiny, for their future. And because we've often said the youth are the leaders of tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Why can't they just lead now? Why have we waited? And in fact, I like to see when people speak up and speak out when things go wrong. So I totally identify with the youth. I think they've also shown resilience for many years. If you actually watch closely, if you study our economy closely, you find that a lot of places where government have just been out of the way, that's where the youths have actually done well. The entertainment industry, the sports and all of that, they do well because government has little or no presence in those areas. And it looks like when government comes to anywhere, they become a blockade. And this is what we've seen. And so the older generation have taken what is due to the younger ones. And only a matter of time, they will protest. And so this was inevitable. But obviously, it started so well organized. And guess what? I was actually part of that protest. I was at the Lekki toll gate. And I identified totally with what I was saying, because it was so well planned. It was a masterpiece, despite the fact it was amorphous, because you couldn't actually identify who the leader was. But everything was so well organized until the bad incident started to happen. And of course, I must also say that I had my concern that this was taking long, and so only a matter of time, and the way it was enlarging, only a matter of time before infiltration of bad eggs and all of that would happen. And unfortunately, all the timing of things that were done wrongly by the leadership, from federal to the states, began to manifest. So Endsars is a manifestation of bad governance.
Right. So as far as you're concerned, there was a good part and a bad part to those protests.
Correct.
And do you believe that, because I mean, you're telling us, which is quite interesting, that you were at the Lekki toll gate, presumably not on the day the shooting took place.
Not on the day the shooting happened.
But do you believe, having been at that scene, that protesters who were at the Lekki toll gate were victims rather than agents provocateurs of what happened?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I actually think that these youngsters were totally professional. You know, we all preach corporate governance. We saw that in action. They were able to mobilize resources, provide and cater for a lot of people for free, and were able to clean up the environment. They were able to make their points very clear. They were able to push the agenda. What I was hoping to see, this would have transited to boardroom conversation, where the leadership would be formed and government would be formed, and because nothing really concrete ever happens on the protest ground. The idea is to raise the awareness, the consciousness, and then move to the next level, negotiation table. And that's what I was hoping to see. And unfortunately, also, government didn't act on time. I was hoping to have the president of Nigeria to speak up on time, because I mean, this is something that could have actually upturned any government. So, but ultimately, I think we must, even with all the chaos that's happened, with all the havoc that's happened, eventually we must, give kudos to these youngsters. We must commend them for getting started these issues, but also guide them appropriate, so that something like this doesn't happen.
Well, the point, of course, is that it's much easier to talk about, because there's a big wave in support of the kids. But if you were the governor of Anambra State, which you're aspiring to be, and you were confronted with what the governor of Lagos State has had to deal with, from the shootings at Lekki to the subsequent looting and arson, etc., how would you handle it?
Let's even start with if, maybe I should say when I become the governor.
Well, I'd say if.
Okay, that's fine. But the point here is, I am hoping that first and foremost, I wouldn't even create an environment for this kind of thing to happen, because I would have done enough to boost the confidence of the younger ones. I would have impacted their lives. I would have touched their lives. There's something that happened in Onitsha that was remarkable. I saw a scenario where these youngsters went to a particular police station because there was a DPO there who has been very good to them. He's been organizing football competitions, been part of the community, Garba. And they saw Garba. Garba came out and addressed them, and we want Garba, we want Garba. They left that particular police station, everything intact. If you have done well, if you have done, even in the midst of this, there are some politicians that were spared because they were being adjudged to have done well. So the first and foremost is that I wouldn't even create an environment where this type of mayhem would happen. Secondly, when this type of thing should happen, unfortunately, we have to be able to show responsiveness. We must be able to speak out and join and be part of the solution, and actually providing the needed solution. The things I actually wanted to see happen, because I actually asked myself, have we learned our lessons? All the ways in government, how are we cutting them? How do we actually begin to infuse the ingenuity of the youth in going forward in our politics? How do we actually create an environment, electoral acts that will promote the participation of the younger ones? How do we actually create a transparent affair where the son of nobody can become somebody in Nigeria, where competency becomes the order of the day, where nepotism is murdered in this country. When we begin to describe and form a Nigeria of this nature, trust me, there'll be confident booster in this country.
Well, that's the key question, isn't it? I mean, it's identifying the problem and finding a solution.
Correct.
Stay with us. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat about the Endsars protests and the campaign for justice. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyegolo. The Endsars protests in Nigeria and now the campaign for justice. The moment has reawakened the conversation about people power versus officially sanctioned violence and human rights abuses. Police brutality has become a familiar topic, not just in Nigeria, but also in Africa, the United States, and across parts of Europe and Asia. But the attitude of ordinary people here in Nigeria is hardening to that sort of abuse. But what about those in power? Are enough of them seeing the warning signs? Well, my guest today is the Anambra State governorship aspirant, Valentine Ozigbo, former president and CEO of Transcorp, the group that owned the Transcorp Hilton Hotel here in Abuja. He reckons that activism may come at a great cost to the youth of this country, but their awakening is the best way and possibly the only way to change the course of Nigeria's history and turn the country back to the right path of rectitude.
This is my message of solidarity to the Nigerian youth. It's been a few days of watching the youth come together around a common cause to change an institution that no longer serves the public well. I've spent a couple of years in recent past, especially few months, interacting with thousands of youths in my home state, and I've heard heartbreaking stories of encounters with SARS, a particular police unit. I don't believe I haven't brought the best of names to the Nigerian police. The stories are unimaginable, and it is time for us to actually end police brutality everywhere. I've always believed in the Nigerian youth, and I've also always believed that the elder generations, the older ones, have judged the youth unfairly. They've actually not provided sufficient basis and justifications and comfort and enablement for the Nigerian youth. And yet, the youth still thrive. They still are not broken. They are strong. They are resilient. They are courageous. They are not beaten down. And therefore stand by you and with you, the youth, as you continue to get your voices known over this menace of police brutality in Nigeria. I'm proud of you for unleashing your youthful energy, and we need this energy even more as we call for an end of SARS. The positive transformation that your collective voices have achieved in the last few weeks have actually demonstrated something very critical, very crucial. That once we're
Okay, that's a little snippet there of my guest, Valentine Ozigbo, the immediate past president and group CEO of Transcorp, owners of the Transcorp Hilton Hotel in Abuja, and who is a governorship aspirant in his home state of Anambra in southeast Nigeria. And he's still with me in the studio. Thank you for staying with us.
Thank you, Charles.
Now, we've heard that the Nnamdi Azikiwe, the first president of Nigeria, has had his statue burnt in Onitsha. What's your reaction to that?
Very, very unfortunate, very reprehensible. To be honest, it could only have been done by people who were not well knowledgeable, educated about who this man was. And this was somebody who was not just the president of Nigeria, but the premier of the eastern states. And during his time, magic happened. It was actually during his time, and eventually followed by Michael Okpara, that South it became the fastest growing zone in the world. It was being studied in Harvard, and this is somebody we all look up to. We all want to be like. I honestly think that great injustice has been done. But guess what? When you have protests like this, bad things are also bound to happen. Which is why I always want people to plan an exit from the very beginning. There must be a clear-cut strategy to get to the end and know what objective we're here to achieve. That was not part of the objective, and I condemn that, and I'm hoping that something like that doesn't happen again. And so I'm hoping that the governor of Anambra State will fix that. Otherwise, when I come back within a month I'll get that done.
Yeah, but when you say you're hoping he'll you mean rebuild
that statue?
Right. Well, I'm sure they will.
Yes.
But the president of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, for instance, during his speech, when he finally got around to it, did not refer to what happened, that big speech he delivered, what happened at the Lekki toll gate, which angered and disappointed a lot of people. What sort of speech would you have delivered to your people if you were in office?
A speech that will show empathy to the wounded, to the dead, and to the victims, and to the families. A speech that will inspire greatness in our Nigerian youths. A speech that will actually celebrate the good things about our youth. There are several unimaginable good that's happened. In fact, the only source of good that I've heard in recent time from the youth, you know, the Pestac, a $200 million deal, or the young Eche from Anambra who became a Guinness record holder, or in fact even go beyond Anambra to a 19-year-old that's become a minister. Those are the things we need to celebrate. So this is time to actually pinpoint those inspirational stories about the youth and celebrate. And then of course take very firm actions that will show seriousness. You need to boost more confidence. So a speech that will boost confidence about Nigeria.
So you think President Buhari got it wrong, basically?
I think it could have been better than that.
How do you mean? I mean, I know you mentioned a number of things,
Yes.
but one of the big issues for people was not even so much about saying nice things about young people, but it was what they perceived to be that lack of empathy with people over what happened. But their argument, because we have to balance this, the argument of the presidency is that the president could not comment on something that he simply did not have enough evidence about. I mean, that the army were denying that it took place. There was no evidence that, you know, people had been shot. There were no bodies. There was nothing like that. I mean, that's a political situation that is politically charged. How would you have dealt with it?
Let me be honest. One of the things I think has gone wrong in Nigeria is absence of consequences, lack of accountability. Leaders must know they're actually servants to the followers.
Yeah, but you still have to establish the facts, don't you?
Yes. But guess what? Right here in the studio, you read about the fact that the army actually now has spoken. So it actually did happen. About who ordered, whether it's the governor or the army, one of them did. So what are the consequences? What has the president done now? Has anybody been sacked? The point here is about general lack of consequence. People just get away with anything. So quite frankly, we need to change the story. We honestly must understand. See, the single most important source of success, whether in private sector or in government, is emotional intelligence. When you understand yourself, have full, understand awareness of your strengths and weaknesses, understand the people and the social environment, and know what to do and what to say. I think empathy is a full part of that emotional intelligence, and that was not fully represented in that speech. I actually expected a lot better than that.
Now, let's move slightly away from the Endsars thing. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about the need for regionalization and for the states in the southeast, for example, where you come from, to focus less on all this talk about marginalization and presidency and more on building up that region, developing their states and doing what people in that region are noted for, which is entrepreneurship and economic and business development. Where do you stand on that?
My general stand is, in anything about life, you've got to have a full assessment of the status quo. Understand what your aspiration, what your dream, what your vision should be, and then understand what you need to do to get to that vision. If we honestly put Nigeria on the table, we know a lot of things are wrong. And if we can imagine, there were actually those days when Nigeria was better than this. What did we do? How can we even get better? Can you imagine how much money we used to have then? We have quadruple of that now. The knowledge we used to have then, we have better of that. We live in a technology world. We actually in the bottom of the pyramid. And so to catch up with the rest of the world, we need to run faster than the rest of the world. How do we become more efficient, more competitive? That is the question. So forget about any name they call it. Some call it restructuring, whatever. Forget about that name. But let's tell ourselves the truth. It's not working out well. How do we get to where we need to be? And when you begin to do this, you understand the importance of competitiveness. You know, even about this police brutality, if you want to correct that, you've got to go back to competitiveness in police. I want where an Anambra governor is saying, my police force is better than KB. I want where the Lagos system, my police force is better than FCT. And that's when you begin to see people getting police to be well funded, well taken care of, and then the civility, the professionalism, the empathy, respect from police will begin to manifest. And so generally, Nigeria, we've got to speak truth to ourselves. And there's a lot of reasons for us to have full introspection beyond the fact that Nigeria was actually at a precipice. Go back to where we were before COVID. COVID should have been a refresher, should have been that signaling point when we begin to do the right things. And then here's another reason. We've got to stop and say to ourselves, we must get it right now.
Right, but let me ask you this then. Anambra State, for instance, where you want to run for governor, is said to have more millionaires per square mile.
No, billionaires, okay.
Well,
okay,
actually, I will limit it to millionaires per square mile than any other part of Africa. Yet the state remains impoverished, remains dependent on allocations from the federal government, and its teeming youth, who you identify with, are massively unemployed, like most other parts of Nigeria. What do you think accounts for that dichotomy? How can there be so many millionaires and yet so much poverty?
I must say maybe Anambra may be a little bit better than that description, but
well, I've been there a number of times.
I live there. You've been there. I live there. So that's the difference.
There are teeming youths,
yes,
many of whom are unemployed.
But I have to. So the part I will agree with you is that we are far from realizing the potential. There's a lot that is possible. In fact, let me tell you this. I think generally there is a problem with the perception of the position of a black man in this world. I think we haven't done enough to prove our value, our importance, our relevance. I think it is time for us to begin to think how to change that narrative. I mean, if that narrative must be changed, actually it's in Nigeria. In Nigeria, I think Anambra stands a very advantaged position. And therefore, back to your question, why haven't we been able to realize and take advantage of these glorious opportunities? I think leadership has to improve. We need a more competent leadership because, and it's not just about a single person who leads, but also surrounding yourself with competent individuals so that you're able to fire on all cylinders and also cascade this down to even the local government, because not just stopping at the state, we need to have a proper functional structure that can work. Then cohesion is important. If you must have a dream, a big vision, how do you get people to buy into that vision? We haven't yet bought that vision as the people of Anambra State. When we do, they will rally around. You see the intellectual property, you see the resources mobilized, and all of that begin to work. So we're yet to define that clear-cut vision and getting people to buy into it. And thirdly, we also lack an important component, which is the value, the culture of continuous improvement. How do we get to where we look for how to improve things on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a yearly basis? How do we cut waste in government? How do we cut all the overburdenedness we see?
Yeah, but the point is that you're asking the questions that everyone is asking.
Yes.
What people are looking for are solutions, not the
and that solution is before you right now. Flesh and blood may not have revealed this, but this is the solution. I want to project myself. This is not yet campaign period, but at appropriate time we can go and interrogate all of this conversation. But the reality is, I want to signal that change that I'm looking for. Right. I want to be the change that I've been professing. And gone are the days when we'll sit by the side and criticize what's happening in government. No. Let's actually go and be that change that we're yearning for. And by the grace of God, what I want to do is actually inspire the greatness in Anambra people so that together we can set a new standard for governance. We can actually begin to change the narrative of the black man in the world.
Right, and let's make it clear that that's not a campaign.
It's not a campaign speech.
Right, this is a jolly nice conversation that you and I are having, although it's very difficult to have a jolly nice conversation given the things that have happened in Nigeria recently and the need for change to occur. But Valentine Ozigbo, the immediate past president and group CEO of Transcorp, owners of the Transcorp Hilton in Abuja, and a governorship aspirant in Anambra State. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Charles. I appreciate it.
You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat about the Endsars protests and the campaign for justice. Stay with us. Well done.
Thank you so much.